Well, thanks for joining me today, everybody. I am your host on Occult Empire. My name is Bob from Cincinnati, and this is Occult Empire, episode 004. And once again, thank you for joining me today. We have a great guest lined up for today, and his name is Dr. Christopher Holmes. And I have a small bio on Christopher. I'm going to let him flesh out the details of this, but I have a small bio that I found online for Dr. Holmes, and I would like to just share it with you so you get an idea of who's going to come on the show today. Dr. Christopher Holmes was born in Sussex, England on October 7th. His father, William, was a Canadian military officer, a graduate of the Royal Military College, stationed in England during the war, where he met Diane, who became his bride and the mother to 3 sons. Dr. Holmes lived his life in Canada since his early years throughout the province of Ontario. He received a Bachelor of Arts from Carleton University in Ottawa and his Master of Arts and PhD degrees in psychology from the University of Waterloo. He worked as a professor at York University in Downsview, Ontario from 1977 to 1990, and then within the Ontario Ministry of Corrections from 1990 to 2002. Over the past 10 years, Christopher has worked independently as a writer and researcher under the 0 Point logos. Christopher's primary interests have long been investigations of human consciousness and psychology as a science of the soul. He has experienced varied states of enlightenment and realization through his life, which has fueled his desire to understand the mysteries of consciousness and creation. And I hope that he would share a little bit today about these experiences of enlightenment and states of consciousness transcending to higher levels. I hope Dr. Holmes will be able to do that with us today. Also, his work explores the interface between mysticism and science, especially as it pertains to consciousness and to studies of creation, physics, and metaphysics. His published works include the Heart Doctrine and the newly published 1137, God's Contracting Universe. Dr. Holmes considers himself a mystic, a psychologist, and a scientist, and most recently a truth activist and spiritual warrior in a world gone mad. He is also the host of a biweekly radio show on BBS Radio called 0 Point, the same name of his website, 0point.ca. So www.zeropoint.ca. Now, before I bring Dr. Holmes on, I would like to make a brief correction on my last Occult Empire episode 003, where we had Mark Passio as the guest. During one of the exchanges, I misspoke. We were talking about the Kabbalistic pillars and the paths, the left-handed path and the right-handed path, and then, of course, what our goal is in alchemy is to try to blend those opposite polar extremes. Remember, we live in a world of duality, a checkerboard floor, so to speak, and what we want to do is combine these pillars, the left and right, into the center pillar, which, of course, is the middle path, the central, the balanced path, which the high creatures of darkness do not want us to get onto. And I misspoke. I said we need to get away from the left-hand path and get on the right-hand path, which is not what I wanted to say. And so I just wanted to correct that for anybody who's keeping a tally. I'm keeping a tally of what I say. So, but the middle path, the balancing of the masculine energies of intellect with the feminine energies of intuition and spirit, joining together to make that composite center, that center path, a balance where your heart, your mind, and your actions, your will, are all focused together. They're not dual. They're not that checkerboard floor. You're rising off that checkerboard floor onto Jacob's ladder. Does that sound familiar? No, that's not just the movie with, who was that, Tim Robbins, all that shaking head stuff. No, they put all these terms out here. I call it Orwellian logos replacement or Orwellian word replacement, where important esoteric terms are confused with terms that have little meaning whatsoever, like Jacob's Ladder. Oh yeah, honey, that's that movie with Tim Robbins. No, Jacob's Ladder is a biblical reference, but it's also a serious esoteric reference to higher states of consciousness. So I want you to discard all the Orwellian doublespeak. That's the word I'm looking for, doublespeak. discard Orwellian doublespeak and get down to the truth of the matter, and get down to the words that mean something, in that case, Jacob's Ladder. There's a true esoteric meaning to Jacob's Ladder. Now, before I bring Dr. Holmes on, and I appreciate, I see Dr. Holmes in the queue. I'm going to bring him on in just a moment, but Dr. Holmes and friends, I would like to share a moment about what got me into metaphysics personally, and the esoteric arts and sciences. 2008, which was not that long ago, I, like many other people, realized that there is a message here through all of these, the UFO alien question, the UFO alien phenomenon. And there has to be an answer out there somewhere. And as I dug deeper and started to pull back the layers over the years, the path led to a very strange place. And I know that some of the listeners will agree and others will disagree, but that's okay. We're all going to arrive to the truth if we continue to seek it on our path. But my path led me to a set of old oak double doors. They were ancient old double doors. For UFOs, you say, wait a minute, what are you doing reaching old ancient doors? These doors led to an Egyptian temple with no windows. And the secret rituals that take place within are blood oath rituals. And so that the profane, and that's you and I, my friends, may not know the secrets that bind these men that take these rituals. What Egyptian temple am I speaking of? Well, it's the same one in your city, in your town, or even in your small community. And, of course, I'm speaking about the Masonic lodges. And this is where the UFO question led in my journey back to the Masonic lodge. And I know that seems like a very serious dichotomy of logic, but if you continue to dig, you will find that there is a link between consciousness, UFOs, and Masonry, or these secret societies, which Masonry represents a larger portion of. And so I want you to continue to dig, and I want you to look farther, because as I studied, I realized there were less aliens with giant gray heads and big eyes flying these machines than there were men keeping a very powerful secret hidden from the public, even to this day. And hopefully later, Dr. Holmes and I, in the second half of our show, we can discuss chemtrails and how this all ties in together with chemtrailing. Oh yes, chemtrails and UFOs are inexorably linked together. And so it would be wise to keep that in mind as well. There was a gentleman by the name of Jim Keith who has since been murdered by the power structure, but he died to share this triune link, this threefold link between UFOs, consciousness, and secret societies. And that book was The Saucers of the Illuminati. Excuse me, just Saucers of the Illuminati. And it linked the secret societies with this hidden Tesla technology, this hidden ether physics that is just starting to crack the surface into the mainstream consciousness. So I want you to Google Tesla, Nikola Tesla, or I want you to search. Don't want to give that company any more, just like Facebook. We don't want to give them any more power than they have. But I want you to search Nikola Tesla, ether physics, and occulted science, because the UFO question might be found there. So I won't belabor it too long, because what I would like to do is bring Dr. Holmes on the line. I'm going to go open the door to our forum and bring Dr. Holmes on the line so that he can share some of his works with us, because it's very important that we begin to discover these secrets together. So without further ado, give me just a moment. I'm going to open the door for Dr. Holmes, and we're going to bring him on so he can share mysteries of consciousness right now. That excellent music you just heard is by my good friend Sounda. And Sounda can be found at reverbnation.com/Sounda. So thank you for this excellent suite of music you provided for Occult Empire, Sounda. I am indebted to you, sir. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Dr. Christopher Holmes. Dr. Holmes, are you there, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thanks for a very nice introduction and excellent discussion on kind of dualities and third force. Gurdjieff would call it third force. He says people in life, they see everything dualistically. And when I began studying consciousness and psychology, I realized how dualistic people's thinking was. Even psychology was defined as the science of behavior and the mind, as though a human being has two parts, mind in the head and stuck on top of a body. It's dualistic. And in science, it's matter and energy, which now in science is yielding to what's called third force science, which recognizes that information is latent within the medium of space itself. So we have been third force blind, seeing everything in science and psychology as dualistic, like left brain, right brain, the head and the heart, conscious, unconscious. All the thinking in the mainstream of science has been dualistic. And one of the things I learned early in my mystical studies through the Gurdjieff teaching, Gurdjieff explains that the two fundamental cosmic laws, one is the law of 3 and the other is the law of 7. And whenever you have a duality, if you look deeper, you find the third force which reconciles and synthesizes and contains the both. And as you say, the path of study of mystical Cabala, which we'll discuss today, there are these triads, and you can ascend the middle pillar and experience different states of realization. And that's described, as you say, in Jacob's ladder. And I'll get into that today later, because I had in my life experiences where I thought I climbed that ladder, and I'll describe a bit of what happened and what I experienced. So it was a very interesting introduction, Bob. I appreciate that. And you had excellent comments on learning to see things dualistically, and you see the kind of black-white of the Masonic lodges and the flora patterns, whereas Gurdjieff says God is first 1, then 3, then 7. Similarly, white light divided by a 3-sided prism gives you a spectrum of 7 colors. Okay, so that's an example of that. If you look at the structure of material nature, we have protons, electrons, and neutrons, 3 material elements that form into 7 rows of elements in the periodic table. So you can take matter and energy and see the triune and sevenfold nature inherent in nature. So this idea of learning to see, understand third force, and with that the law of 7, these are profound mystical concepts which I've studied and tried to understand now for over 40 years, approximately that period of time. So anyway, Bob, thanks for having me on, and I really appreciated your introduction and a beautiful piece of music.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Holmes. We appreciate you having taken your time to come on here with us. May I call you Christopher? Is that okay?
I prefer that, Bob. I'm embarrassed by being a doctor.
No, you worked hard to get those degrees, so I know how it goes. So I only hit my bachelor's, and then I gave up. I ran out of money and patience.
I realize, like, everything I feel I've learned as an individual psychologist and individual in my life did not come from academic education and training. In a way, in my view, it's completely ill-founded and misconceived and fundamental mistakes throughout the whole of modern psychology. That's what I began to realize 40 years ago. At that time, I was a graduate student going into psychology, and I realized that I was interested in becoming a psychotherapist and working with people who had mental problems and so-called. And I realized in all the theories of psychotherapy, everybody talked about the importance of consciousness. Like in Freudian psychology, you have the unconscious, and you have to bring all these unconscious elements into consciousness to resolve them. So it occurs. That's a very important process. And in Gestalt, it was the awareness continuum, and you had to bring things outside of awareness into awareness and focus on them. So the idea that somehow the development of consciousness is critical to psychotherapy, to resolving these issues of the past that bind us, and bind our psychic energies and our breath, and So the study of consciousness, I was very interested in that, and how the development of consciousness allows someone to overcome patterns of conditioning. This is very important because people are conditioned through their life experiences in particular ways. And then to try to get free of that conditioning, you have to become conscious of what those patterns are. And as you bring your attention to them, you can release them. And the more and more you release, the more and more you free your consciousness and, in a way, your spirit, your essential life in you. So we have to learn to free ourselves of conditioning, and this comes with the awakening of consciousness. And that awakening of consciousness, like in the first place, this issue of consciousness today is the fundamental enigma in both psychology and science. Like, what is the nature of human consciousness? And there's all kinds of views on it. And my viewpoint stands in a way totally opposed to the mainstream, who I believe have made a fundamental mistake in adopting what I call the head dogma. And that is the dogma, unproven belief that the brain in the head produces human consciousness. And when I say consciousness, what I mean in a general sense is inner awareness of being. Like, this moment, like, as you know, you have that inner awareness of being, and I have that in myself. So in a general way, I'm meaning that inner awareness of being. What is that consciousness, and where does it come from? Okay, and scientists have always assumed it's produced in the brain, where the mind is. Okay, so I call this a head dogma. But nobody in science can explain where in the brain it's produced or what it is, or it's completely unsolved enigmas. And through my life studies, I began studying esoteric and mystical psychologies, and I discovered that they had a completely alternative view of the origin and nature of human consciousness. That it's not manufactured out of the matter in the brain in the head by the brain, but rather it originates out of the human heart. And the spirit and soul life in a human being is connected to the heart, to the blood flow, and to the oxygenation of the body. Just as in the Bible, it says God breathes into man a living soul. Well, I realized over time that mystics were saying, they say, know thyself. But the self they're referring to has to do with this self within the lotus of the heart, or the cave of Brahman. There's all different kinds of mystical terms for the heart. In a way, in mystical literature, one knows oneself and one knows God through the awakening and transformation of the human heart. And this in the mystical literature is what is meant by the state of attaining self-consciousness. And a very famous yogi once defined self-realization as the dissolution of the false mind into the lotus of the heart. And see, the mind in the head is the center of conditioned personality and ego. And it in a way, as people grow up, the mind in the head and the personality becomes more dominant than the essential self within the heart. And so people form a false consciousness system. So in a way, we have to recover this essential feeling of an experience of this essential consciousness within us connected to the heart. So this is, in a way, a profoundly important mystical concept. And you find this in the different religious traditions. Like this is in mystical Christianity, it's in Judaism and Cabala. In Judaism, they say the truth is under your nose all the time. And in a way, your heart is under your nose. And the Sufis talk of this, and Muhammad, and the secret doctrine, and it's hidden in Gurdjieff. So this concept that the self that we want to attain to is connected to the heart. And in my work, in my later work, I actually explore the higher dimensional holographic physics of the human heart and develop a model of how this is all achieved. But anyway, Bob, so I loved when you talked in your introduction. You said about the center, and you said like the heart, and that's what I'm saying in my writings. The center of a human being's self-existence emerges out of the heart, which is the first organ of the body to begin to function. And the heart is far more primary than the mind in the head. In fact, the electromagnetic volume of the heart is 10,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic volume of the mind in the head. So from a quantum physics point of view, the center of the human being is the heart and not the head.
Yep. And I'm with you, Dr. Holmes or Christopher. Now, you just mentioned in all these mystical traditions, I love how you brought up the secret, because I see this. I can't remember who wrote it. I want to say Albert Churchward or A.E. Waite or one of these older Masonic writers, but they said the secret is closer than hands and feet, and like you said, just under our nose. And he wasn't that explicit as you were, but the secret is closer than hands and feet. And the only response would be the heart. And for these writers in the mystical traditions, the heart, just as you have said, is the primary component of what is termed the generative principle, or the G inside the compass in the square. And I know the G takes on many meanings to many different people, but for some of the studies that I've delved into, the G is this generative force, which is the heart itself. And in my own esoteric meditations, I have seen coming out of the heart a living, dynamic, organic growth, like a plant, just growing and continuing to grow. And as you continue to feed the heart and remove all of the barriers that surround the heart, I'm going to be hurt again. I don't want this person to hurt me, so I'm going to put up armor. And I've got to make sure I keep my heart separate from them, because I can't afford that kind of feeling, that kind of pain again. And if we are able to remove these barriers and this armory around the heart, supposedly some powerful organic cosmic force begins to move within us. And I'm wondering if you resonate with any of that.
Oh, well, everything you say is absolutely beautiful, Bob. I'm 100% in accordance with it. And in terms, firstly, of generative principle, like I'm saying, I remember beginning to study the Bhagavad Gita, and Lord Krishna says, I am the self seated in the hearts of all living beings. And in the Vedas, it's explained within the heart is both the Paramatma, which means like the infinite God, and the Jiva Atma. The Jiva Atma is described as 100,000th of the horse's hair, essentially a 0 point, like a point source, a Jiva Atma. It's like a divine spark or spiritual spark. So and both are said to have their abode within the heart. And this Jiva Atma, it is inherently living. So it is the life force within the body, and it is inherently self-illuminating, like the sun. It has its own inherent self-illuminating nature. So this is the basis on which you could have a holographic life experiences, because you have this point source of coherent light at the heart of being, which provides the light needed to create holographic human existence. So that light of self is within the heart, and that Jiva Atma is then said to be embodied in the bliss sheath, which is described as the size of a small grape. It's the abode of the Jiva Atma within the heart. And as you described, people, as we go through life, through sufferings and hurts and conditionings and so on, people form what are called knots about the heart, which means your essential heart feeling. You form knots or around it, so it deadens your essential life experience, and it's a way of protecting yourself from being hurt. But in a way, you lose yourself over time. As you grow older, you lose the experience of that bliss sheath within the heart. But if you see an infant in being born, when they're born, it's like they have an inherent blissfulness and glee to an infant. If the infant is happy, of course, kind of. You just see that bliss in them. So I believe that as people grow up, we lose that essential heart feeling connected to the bliss sheath. And we form knots around the heart. Or other people talk about veils about the heart. And other people talk about the heart as a mirror. And everybody's mirror is all smoky and covered over. But if you clean that mirror more and more, then the light of God you find within the human heart. So, and you describe a living growth out of the heart. That's exactly what I'm saying also. And Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine, she says the sons, meaning created beings, whether a universe or a human being, she says the sons expand and contract through their own selves and hearts. So as life comes into the body, you expand within, without, from a 0 point. And then as life leaves the body, I believe all the vitality and consciousness gathers again to the heart. So as you approach death, there's a movement from without, within, all back to the heart. And the soul leaves the body to pass into different alternate dimensions according to one's merits. So I think our thinking is quite in accord, Bob. I really appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure, Christopher. And you're bringing things to mind too that yes, this divine spark that is in with each one of us, from the font, from that ocean of the divine creator, this spark drops out of the ocean and into each one of our hearts, our beings, and we are that expression. And our goal, or one of our goals this lifetime, should be to cultivate that quintessence, as the alchemists speak of it, that divine central point, that light within each of us. That I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, that's beautiful. As I teach, like a first principle of magic, according to Aleister Crowley, is that every man and woman is a star. And what that means is everybody has that spark of the divine, the God spark within them. Now, this, in a way, exists in higher dimensional space, and most people, we are further and further removed and have no sense and inner experience of that and what we really are. So we have to strive to attain this knowledge of our higher nature, and that's kind of the spiritual path. That's climbing the ladder of Jacob, and not like illumination or enlightenment. People often think that they may have a mystical experience and have profound insights and realizations, but it doesn't leave you enlightened in the full sense, because there's so many levels of realization and stripping away the veils and so many levels. It's a path. It's not like all of a sudden you're enlightened and you know everything. It's not like that.
No Satori moment, so to speak, as the Buddhists teach.
Well, you can have Satori moments, and there's different kinds of states of samadhi. Like in my work, I discuss in yoga, different sheaths in the heart, and as you strip away different sheaths, you acquire different faculties and have different experiences in different realms. So there's complex levels to realization and enlightenment. And then, firstly, there's the awakening of the heart. And if you awaken in the heart and experience that light and be flooded with that light, that life can manifest through your throat chakra and your brow chakra and your crown chakra. So there's and each chakra has its own pleasures and mysteries and potencies. So, yeah, often I think too much think of enlightenment as a kind of unitary phenomena, and it's not. And I think through my life I've had all different experiences of enlightenment, and over time it culminates, and then you can experience more dramatic things over time. But cultivating the path of the heart is most important, and cultivating consciousness.
Yes, and if I may take a moment, Christopher, I found a old Rosicrucian text, and there was a portion of it. I just wanted to take a moment to read this little paragraph, if I may.
Please.
When the heart becomes open and unarmored, and this feeling of unconditional love is cultivated, there is an ignition of the spiritual spark within the heart. It is then when an etheric rose light arises within the heart and moves up to what we would call the third eye center, and this rose etheric stream enters into the center of the head, the area that is the third ventricle of the brain, and it's a combination of the pituitary gland and the pineal gland, what some have called the crystal palace. That's a term that doesn't get much use anymore, and it's also been Orwellian double-spoken as a military term for the nuclear site. Crystal palace is, but it hides an esoteric term, which is the combination that just like you spoke of the heart sheath, this little grape-sized cavity. There is this little cavity where the pineal gland and the pituitary gland are located, known as the crystal palace. And in the Eastern esoteric teachings, that is where this rose light that the Rosicrucian spoke of rise up into the third eye area, which the crystal palace, and at this stage, and then I go back to the writing, quote, and this space is illuminated, and it leads to direct spiritual vision, which is known as clairvoyance, which is a function of the heart. So here in this Rosicrucian text, they're speaking of an actual rose etheric light, or a proverbial light, a metaphysical light, that rises from the heart, that goes into the third eye. But the third eye, so to speak, this pituitary pineal crystal palace is not activated until the heart is activated. And I just wanted your comments on that.
Wow, all very beautiful again, and in accord with what I teach and understand, even though there's one element that's different a bit in that. Well, let me read this quote from Blavatsky. She says, "Learn above all to separate head learning from soul wisdom, the I from the heart doctrine. But even ignorance is better than head learning with no soul wisdom to illuminate and guide it. The doctrine of the I is for the crowd, the doctrine of the heart for the elect. Great Sifter is the name of the heart doctrine." Now, the idea of sifter, you're sifting sand to find the nuggets of gold, and she's saying this heart doctrine's like the ultimate nugget of gold is the self within the heart. But there, as you say, there are these other faculties of the third eye. But what I see in the world, you see, the Illuminati have as their symbol the awakened eye of dogma, as Blavatsky calls it, in the triangle. And they follow the eye doctrine. And I think the Illuminati, they bypass the heart. You see, they bring these energies up and manifest it through the third eye, and they acquire higher faculties, but they bypass, they're not established in the heart. And in a way, they're soulless. And Blavatsky says they can attain some mastery of the astral light, but it's a lower realm. So that was the one element, a bit in what you were saying. I believe it's the light of self within the heart that can illuminate these higher centers. But I think sometimes, Muktananda encouraged people to meditate on the third eye and open the third eye. Now, I think you could do that independently of being awakened and established in the heart. But what happens is you lose your mind and you can be into all kinds of psychical realms, and you're not established in yourself. In a way, the more you want to be established within the heart first, in a way, and not kind of open the third eye directly without first being established within the heart. That's yeah.
And yes, and you're bringing up an important point that, yes, through intellect alone, the bypassing of the heart is dangerous in esotericism. This is represented to us in the symbol of the skull and bones. That the third eye or the consciousness, or excuse me, intellect moving directly without going through the heart and then straight to action, the bones. So the skull, the intellect moving straight to action, the bones, is a symbol of cut out the heart, keep the heart out of the equation. And as you said, I saw the top of the tree of life on the left side, where you spoke of reaching the third eye state, that at that top you hit pure intellect, and that is a form of illumination that you can't, like you said, you can reach illumination with intellect alone, but it will be a very lopsided and left-handed path form of illumination, and we see what kind of world we get when the powers that be are left-handed path and illuminated. Boy, what a wonderful world we live in today.
Exactly, and you see, in a way, these people are like egomaniacs, okay? And it's all in pursuit of one's lower nature. Now, in the heart, the best symbol for the heart and the key to understanding much of my writing is the Star of David with a central point. And I maintain the secret of the Star of David is the seventh central point. Now, if you look at the flag of Israel and you look at the symbol of world Zionism, it's a seal of Solomon, but there's no central point. It's empty inside. So there's no divine spark. So the seventh point in the center of the Star of David represents that divine spark or spiritual spark. And in a way, you look at the state of Israel, in a way those people are soulless. You see, they have such a conditioned egomania through their lives that, like, they're the chosen people, and they don't see their cruelty at all. They become soulless. They don't cultivate their soul qualities. So they lack compassion for other people. You know, they learn to see other people are goyim or cattle or useless eaters. And these people have this kind of grandiose, inflated egoism. And they use the mind, but their mind sciences are always so pathetically small-minded in a way. Like you read their writings of these globalists, they're all like pathetic, really. They're kind of decrepit little people who have no heart, no feeling for humanity, no aspiring to love or justice in the world, no striving for world peace. Instead, you got perverted men and women who function as parasites on society. They're psychopaths. They lack the impulse of divine conscience. So in a way, they become empty inside, like the flag of Israel. They don't respect individual life within the human being. So the Star of David with the central point, that is actually the symbol of the heart chakra in yogic and Vedic teachings. And it's not a Jewish symbol. It goes back to ancient Egypt, and it was prominent in Russia. And it's only in 1800s that the Rothschilds took that as their family shield, and they degraded the meaning of that profound. It's a beautiful symbol, even without a central point. In a way, what it represents in magic is the elements of fire, which is an upward turn triangle, and water, which is a downward turn triangle. And the Star of David is inherent in the second verse of the book of Genesis, when the Spirit of God moves across the face of the waters. The symbol of that is the Star of David. And then in the Genesis, God says, let there be light. So that establishes the first point within the lotus of the heart, the self, the emergence of the self from within. And they say most people, their hearts are turned downwards, and they're controlled by the 3 lower chakras of the 7. And those represent the motives of, from the root chakra, money, sex, and power. And you just see that among the elites. It's like their drive for money, sex, and power, that they're obsessed with that. Obsessed with it. And they make pigs, in their greed, they make pigs ashamed. And you see such sexual perversion and pedophilia and so on. They're sex obsessed. And then for others, it's like Henry Kissinger. He says, power is my aphrodisiac. You see, he's an egomaniac obsessed with power, all because of their emptiness inside. And this leads to a very profound teaching from Cabala, which I'd like to explain. It has to do with what's called the Zimzum contraction. And the concept is, before the beginning, you have an infinite God that permeates all space. So for that infinite being to allow a finite being to come into existence, God had to vacate a space, because otherwise everything was swallowed up in the infinite. So God had to create a Zimzum contraction, so to withdraw his splendors from a volume of space to allow an individual being to come into existence. So the concept in mystical teachings is we all have this nothingness at the heart of being is established within us, is that nothingness within the heart. And then in life, people strive to fulfill the heart's desire, or to or to avoid the emptiness of the heart. Like, people don't want to be no thing, people want to be something. So how can you be something? Well, you can have a lot of money and possessions, and then it gives you a sense of being, as though you exist. It doesn't do you any good at the moments of death, but through life it's valuable. But you become you gain identity through your sexual conquest, or through having power over other people. But these are all lower motives of men number 1, 2, and 3. And so the Illuminati are not illuminated. What they are the degenerate line of human beings who fail to attain to the level of the awakening of human heart, such that they lack compassion or the capacity for love in their life.
Yes.
And so the fourth level, the first level of awakening, see, Gurdjieff would say most people are men number 1, 2, or 3, governed by the 3 lower chakras. The first level of awakening is the opening of the human heart and attaining to the heart chakra. And then you can explore the upward turn triangle, the 3 higher centers. You see, but it's, in a way, it's all contained within the heart. And this is some of the mysteries of the Star of David, and that's why if you look at my book, in my books, when I talk about the Star of David, I focus on the secret of the 7th point, because I think this is a profoundly important concept, and we see the lack of that in Zionism and what it means as a psychology of Zionism.
Yes, that central point. You were the first one to point that out to me when you called into the show, What on Earth is Happening, and that's how I found you. I'll share with the listeners a moment. I called Dr. Holmes. I was able to find his website, but it was almost a year after I heard this gentleman call into What on Earth is Happening, and he had a profound insight into the heart. into consciousness and into the point inside the Star of David, or Solomon's seal, some have called it. And I thought, who is this guy? This is so intriguing. And of course, the call ended, and I had no chance of figuring out who this man was. By chance, he called in recently to What on Earth is Happening Again, and he brought up his book, The Heart Doctrine, and I was so thankful, Christopher, that you put that out there, and I'm so thankful that you are active in speaking about this, because these are very important topics. Yes, living in the heart chakra, opening the heart chakra, and on the Tree of Life, the heart chakra is, of course, correspondent with Tiferet, as you already know, and that Tiferet has a line directly up to Keter, the Godhead, that there is no breaking point between the heart chakra and the divine source. And I think that is profound wisdom from the ancients to us, that there is a direct line to our heart, where the other spheres, there are paths that might lead to other spheres, but there is a direct connection between the heart and the source. And I think a lot of people who study this miss this. Can you, for a moment, if you have a moment, can you share some of your knowledge of Cabala and how it relates to our conversation today, and maybe one of your mystical experiences, if you would?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. At first, you identified the self with Tiferet, which is associated with the sun and which is associated with the quality of beauty. And the sun is often represented by a circle with a point in the center. That represents the self. So that's a symbol. A circle with a point in the center represents self within the heart. And the self within Tiferet, as you mentioned, it's on the central column, so it's directly below Keter. But it's the only sephira that has direct connection to the three supernals. And this is what I'd like to get into. One, very important to understand Kabbalistic teaching. And if people have a crayon handy, you might want to try to draw this on a piece of paper. Firstly, it's useful to separate the three supernals, okay, because the first three sephira can be represented like you have a triangle, an upward turned triangle, and a sphere at each of the vertices. So that represents the three supernals. And then when creation manifests, it manifests 7 spheres below. So what you have is you have the 3 above and the 7 below, which gives you the 10. So the 7 is the created universe, and there are said to be 7 levels. We find this throughout all different mystical teachings. There are 7 planes of existence, 7 different bodies, 7 chakras. Everything, Blavatsky says, 7 is the number of the divine mysteries, because the supernal triad then produced the lower 7. And the conclusion of it all is Malkuth, which is the bottom sphere, and that represents material existence. Okay, so normally people's consciousness is centered in Yesod, which is the psychical realm, just above Malkuth. But really what we want to attain to is to Tiferet, and that's the first level of self-realization. And then Tiferet is on a direct path down from Keter. But often people talk about what they call the invisible 11th Sephira. Are you familiar with this, Chris?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and it's often referred to as DAAT, spelled D-A-A-T. And it is said, like, when the 3 supernals manifest below arise out of the chaos, they have that first point, which is DAAT, which is described as an invisible point. And then that comes down into Tiferet. So I would say Tiferet is where you have a spiritual spark. DAAT is the divine element. And then the divine element resolves back into the 3 supernals. So climbing the ladder of Jacob would be bringing your consciousness from Yesod up to Tiferet to Dot, and then disillusion into the realm of the Absolute. So that's the idea of climbing the ladder of Jacob. But the ladder of Jacob really is a figure that's used when you use 4 trees of life to represent the 4 world orders, the divine world of emanation, the spiritual world of creation, the psychical world of formation, and the world made, or the material world. So a human being, in a way, we exist in all of these levels simultaneously, although most people have no understanding of how they exist in these higher realms, because they're so conditioned into their emotions and feelings and such. So the idea of climbing the ladder of Jacob is the idea of resolving these dualities and attaining liberation from the side pillars and forces and climbing that central pillar in the tree of life. So in a way, the Kabbalistic tree of life is a model of higher dimensional consciousness and what we can attain through different levels of awakening and realization.
Yes, and just to add on to that, it's a side point with this. In my research to be prepared for the show today, I've listened to some of your other radio appearances and read some of your excerpts from your work, and I know that you are a speaker on 2 topics that I wanted to bring up in conjunction with Cabala, or just the idea of conscious movement upward, up the ladder, and that is present moment awareness, and also the power of breath or prana into us to reinvigorate this connection with the heart. If you could comment on that.
Yeah, I will, but I want to divert just for a moment because of associations your comments brought up, and
Sure.
back in 2005, I was invited to Los Angeles to be in a movie with Guy Ritchie, who was Madonna's husband, and it was on Ego, and Guy told me they were doing a 4-part series on Cabala.
How about that?
And so they videotaped me for 40 minutes in kind of a structured interview, and we kind of broke, and I heard someone in the film crew say, "Wow, that guy knew more than all the scholars." And Guy Ritchie turned to me and said, "Yeah, what you had to say was really interesting. Was there more that you would have liked to have said?" And I started talking about, how Cabala is a model of higher dimensional physics, and it's a model of the levels of consciousness and so on. And Guy Ritchie said, "Wow, is that ever interesting? Let's go back." And we all went back, and we did another 40-minute shoot, all on the kind of mysteries of Cabala and physics. And it was partly that experience which then led me to kind of deeper study of Kabbalistic teachings and such. And if you look up on the internet, or you look in one of my books, you see my letters to Guy Ritchie and Madonna. And if you look at, did you see Madonna's Super Bowl performance?
I've seen images. I did not see the actual performance, but I have seen photographs of it.
You do have to watch the last 2 songs of her performance. The second to last song is all about opening your heart. That's what it's all about. It's a beautiful song, okay? And the last song, you watch the video at the beginning of the song. What you have is the 0-point center emerging out of the Star of David in Madonna's song. Wow. And her song is "Life is a Mystery." So if you look at the last 2 songs of Madonna at the Super Bowl, you see 2 elements of all that I teach in terms of the opening of the human heart and the concept of the divine element within the Star of David of the heart. And you can see that in Madonna's performance, which is really quite spectacular. I'm going to do a tribute to her up on my website. So I've often felt that kind of connection a little bit to the work of Madonna and Guy Ritchie, even though I've kind of never met Madonna. That was kind of a thrill in my life anyway. I was so inspired to see her Super Bowl performance. Oh, how beautiful, you know. Because sometimes everybody seems to think Madonna, she has been kind of representative, I guess, of the Illuminati and all that. But I don't know, there's something really pure and beautiful to me in Madonna also. And in my work at one point, I awarded Madonna. She was the first time I awarded a star to anyone because her music was so influential in my life. Some of her mystical music, if you listen to Isaac, certain of her songs are absolutely beautifully inspired.
Christopher, can you comment, because I know there is a large swath of people that anything to do with Cabala, or in this case maybe Madonna, the all-seeing eye, the Illuminati, moving even towards the world of theosophy, Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Annie Besant. These engender a negative connotation. You mentioned Aleister Crowley. Can you reconcile, or would you please reconcile, or what's your take on that? Because there is a large negative connotation with all that in the public perception.
I know, and it's such a shame because, see, it's like the Illuminatis and the elites, they've treasured and tried to study and use and understand these things, but we on the left-hand path, or the right-hand path, I wouldn't, let's not put it left or right, but these are mystical symbols. Let's not let them hijack the meaning and power of these symbols. This Star of David with the central point is one of the most profound mystical symbols of all times. We can't shy away. See, they've stolen that knowledge, and they've used it for deviant purposes. You know, if you look at the book of Genesis, there are two trees in the Garden of Eden. The first is the tree of life, and that's the name of the Kabbalistic tree. It's the tree of life, and it's a Kabbalistic tree. You see, the Kabbalistic tree is a symbol of higher mystical knowledge. Okay, you don't have to use it for deviant, subversive purposes, but they have. And Crowley seemed to have become, sex obsessed, and people get inflated sometimes, and we have all this Luciferian and satanic influence among the elites, but it's all lower order teachings. The Heart Doctrine is for the elect. They've chosen the path of the eye doctrine and material power and gain, but they're left soulless and empty. So I think we have to reclaim these symbols and put a center in the Star of David that recognizes the inherent God principle in living beings, and it changes it from the empty, soulless flag of Israel to a higher inspired teaching, and Kabbalah is the same.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't know about Aleister Crowley. I read the Book of the Law, and on my website you can read my writings on the mysteries of Hadith and Nui, which is a beautiful aspect of the Book of the Law by Crowley. Now, that doesn't mean I don't endorse all the black magic and ritual magic that Crowley went into. I never myself got into that at all. Blavatsky, as a theosophist, really discouraged ritual, especially all these kind of satanic and Masonic rituals.
Yes.
And, to me, to me it was an eye-opener to learn that there was all that deviant aspect to mystical studies. I wasn't aware of that until I woke up to the world situation only like 6 years ago, which is kind of traumatizing a little bit.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing your point of view on that, because as I dig deeper in my studies, yes, it appears that the mystery knowledge, the mystery traditions, is knowledge that has been corrupted and perverted and used as a weapon against the people of the world today. And that just by its very inherent nature as knowledge, as information, does not make it evil or good. It makes it a tool, and a tool of consciousness. And it can either inspire, ennoble, and assist us in our growth here on this sphere, this planet, or it can enmesh and mire us into a dark trap if we do not understand this knowledge of self, because that's what all this comes down to: knowledge of the self. As above, so below. As within, so as without. So what's going on internally, the microcosm, is expressed externally in the macrocosm. The grand wheelwork of nature, the great the turning of the stars and the planets. There is import in all this, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why the ancients held this knowledge dear and tried to pass it on to us is because they knew we would need it one day to help us to be conscious and aware not only of the internal, what's going on in ourselves, but externally, the strange movements of the weather patterns. But I don't know about you, Christopher, up in Toronto, but down here in the Midwest in Cincinnati, we've had no winter to speak of this year. There has been no winter. And my God, I have green plants, shoots popping out of my yard, and it's the third week of February here. But the point of all this, and to tie it all together, is that there is a knowledge differential going on here, a vacuum of knowledge. And what Dr. Holmes is attempting to do is to share his knowledge of the mysteries so that we can continue our quest for truth, so that we can continue to have a grasp of all of these varied sources, what we would call the mystery traditions in our 21st century world, so that we can make powerful decisions, not only concerning our internal consciousness, but also our external actions. Because as you know, guys, ignorance in action is one of the worst things in the universe. And let's not be ignorant anymore. Let's not approach everything from a state of fear, like I did up to this point, maybe till a year ago. Let's not, everything dealing with the mystery schools and illumination and the Cabala, it's not all negative, guys. It's a tool. It's a system. It's science. I mean, can you imagine if there was, whatever science, I don't know, physics, basic physics, had been hidden from us all this time, and all of a sudden we realize in the ancient writings, hey, physics is a science we don't know about, just like we're learning about natural law now. But physics is all of a sudden part of our world. Oh, well, honey, that's the devil. They wrote about that. That's all the devil's work. Well, we could approach it that way, but you know what? The ones in power are going to use it to their gain to thwart us. I suggest that we learn this stuff and come up with a holistic approach to this and discard, as Dr. Holmes has mentioned, Christopher's mentioned, some of the darker ritualistic Masonic aspects that we don't need. No, we do not need the dark left-handed rituals. We don't need that, but we can examine it and find out how they're using it against us. So, Dr. Holmes and Christopher, I appreciate you giving me a moment to explain that. I'm working it out myself, and I know that some of the listeners have qualms, and there are dark theosophists as there are light theosophists.
Yeah,
there are dark. Yeah, they're dark. All kinds of people, but please continue, sir.
And I was going to say exactly the same with Kabbalistic teaching. Like, I've studied Kabbalistic teaching for 30 to 40 years, and I never knew that there was such a dark element for it. And I mean, I didn't know about the Illuminati and these globalist psychopaths and the global crime syndicate. I studied Jewish mysticism for 30 years before waking up to that. And it's like Judaism has been corrupted, just like Christianity is corrupted, and the Christian churches have lost the mystery teachings of their own religions. Like they don't know about the Heart Doctrine. They don't grasp it. They don't, we have a nation where we think we're waging a Christian war over in the Middle East. Like Christ said, thou shalt not kill. We're committing mass murders in the name of Christianity. It's insane. You see, all the religious traditions have been perverted from within, without, and they've schemed this So in a way, like I can say, end time to say, what Christ would spew out the churches, like, what, this is Christianity? What did you do to stand up for your brothers and sisters being murdered in these countries and around the world? What do you do? It's everybody's in this circle of narcissism and materialism. And people, they don't know there's a science to the soul, and people don't strive towards their own self-perfection in terms of being, which is what one does in the mystical path.
Yes, and you're hitting the nail on the head. And now before we shift gears again, is there anything that you would like to wrap up on your knowledge of Cabala? I think we've lost Dr. Holmes, but I'm sure he'll call back in. So knowledge, it's a tool. We have to use it, and we can't approach everything from a fearful state. That is the world of this dark Illuminati, this dark faction that controls our world. And so we do need to be holistic in our approach and continue to seek the truth. Now Dr. Holmes mentioned his 0 point energy, that this was something that Blavatsky had termed, or she didn't use the exact term. She did come up with the idea of the 0 point, this center of the soul. It's almost in quantum physics. It's the point where the particle in the wave function, that the one will collapse and give rise to the other, and it confounds scientists to this day. That's why most of them ignore it, because it does not fit in with their preconceived Victorian notion of what science should be. There should be a logical flow and a sequence, and this is translogical, as a friend of mine once coined that term. This is the science of translogic. Okay, so it's beyond what science can comprehend. But these mysticists, these esotericists, they had a handle on this because they read the old knowledge, the ancient knowledge that is, as stated, is just starting to seep through the surface here, and we're starting to evaluate it. So, so we need to continue to evaluate knowledge. Now, Dr. Holmes, I would like you to try to call back in, if you would. And while you're doing that, we will take but a short break. And when we come back, I would like to discuss with Dr. Holmes a little bit more of his theories. And we will be back in just a moment. So give me a few moments, and we'll be right back, my friends. Okay, my friends, we are back on Occult Empire, episode 004. I seem to have lost my guest, Dr. Christopher Holmes. However, the show goes on. If anybody would like to call in, the call-in number is area code 646-564-9624. Once again, area code 646-564-9624. And we were talking about Christopher Holmes. His website is zeropoint.ca, so zeropoint.ca for Canada. And he is a researcher up in Ottawa, and he's helping people. I know that a lot of his work now centers on 9/11. And getting truth out to people. And, of course, that's way important, and it's always been an important function or part of my broadcasting life here. But it's a part of his as well. And also he is a documenter of the chemtrail phenomenon. And, chemtrails, guys, they just don't go away. And for those people who have been hiding under a rock, chemtrails, of course, are the thin white clouds that can be easily mistaken as contrails in the air. They are, of course, not contrails. They are, contrails, of course, are dissipating ice crystals and pollution right behind an airplane. And you can see this little tail on an airplane. It dissipates very quickly behind the airplane. But these are trails that are left by planes, number one, planes that are not flying on commercial paths. You will notice these planes that are called chemtrail planes fly at a lower altitude, so as to make sure that these thin trails of spray, these thin white clouds, are left close to the surface of the planet. And you will note that these clouds linger. They stay for minutes on end, and then they eventually open up to a wide pattern to where they just disperse in the air. Some of them begin to look like wispy clouds. How convenient for those that spray them. Others just dissipate altogether into the atmosphere. But the examination of these chemtrails can be equated to mainly aluminum content, metal, high metal, metal, aluminum, barium, and strontium, which, it's another chemical. But from what I understand in my limited research on the particulates, is that all of these metals weaken the immune system, kind of like the aluminum that they placed in the deodorants and underarm, antiperspirants that we put under our arms. Or was that the aluminum phosphate that I found on the back of a box of Pop-Tarts? That you put in the toaster? I know I'm sharing my dark secrets. I had a Pop-Tart here within the last few months. At any rate, I threw the box away because I realized it said aluminum phosphate. Number one, what would I need to eat aluminum phosphate for? Is there any reason to eat aluminum phosphate? I would think not. But instead of boring you with my needs for eating aluminum phosphate, kids, don't eat it, it's bad for you, I would like to bring back on my good friend and guest, Dr. Christopher Holmes. Dr. Holmes, are you there, sir?
Yeah, I am, and we don't need the aluminum in the chemtrails either. Thank you very much, Mr. Rockefeller. And
that's right.
it's terrible. See, there's an example. To me, these people who are spraying us with chemtrails need to be charged under the anti-terrorist legislation. These people have a religious, ideological purpose, and they think they have the right to kind of cull the population and intentionally spread illness through our societies. And they've done this. They're carrying on this biological warfare against us now. And the same people who are spraying us with chemtrails are the same people who did 9/11, the same people assassinated Kennedy, the same people have caused millions of Americans to lose their homes, the same people destroying our planet. And it's like we as humankind, we have a collective enemy. And we have to ferret out who these people are and turn this tide. And they poison us through our food, our water, our air, and then you turn on your TV and they poison your hearts and minds. It's become more and more perverse, less and less of higher motives or spiritual values in our media. It's terrible, some of it.
Yes.
Most of it.
And you're right. It is a form, as you know, as a psychologist, it is a form of aversion therapy. What is broadcast 24/7 on the airwaves. My wife and I were watching a show. Well, my wife was watching a show, and I sat down next to her. And as the learned gentlemen and ladies with their satanic occult badge on their chest. They pick through the debris of a murder and through the body parts and the sprayed blood on the walls, and this is such a noble adventure that they are engaged in. But what it is the mind of a Satanist. These are this is the world of a Satanist, and they want you immersed deep into that consciousness of blood and gore and sin and vice and horror and disgust. And after about 5 minutes of it, I told my wife, I love you. I can't do this anymore. I cannot sit here. It is physically harming me. And I had to, of course, go in the other room. But this is the content of 95% of the Western population. It's sad and horrifying to think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Television just had this horrible effect on people, and to consider so many people watch like 3-4 hours of television every day. I can't even watch it anymore. I don't watch television at all. I mean, I'm on the internet too much, but that's different because it's like this era has led to all this kind of new knowledge coming out that leads to reconsideration of so much of what we thought was like our history, like the history of the wars and what's really behind it, and how all these things were false flag terrorist events, and how the London train bombings, Oklahoma City, all these things are being done by these psychopathic elites and people in our own police and intelligence community. It's terrible. Humankind has never known life apart from the control of these people. We've had it through our whole life. I'm over 60 years old. Even in the protocols of Zion, it said we own the media, they said, and they have. And they took over textbook publication, and they infiltrated the university system, and there's been an intentional dummying down of America, as one author labels it.
Yes.
Yeah, TV is terrible. Once you wake up, like, it's useful at times to turn it on in some programs, because you can see what schemes they're concocting next. Like, now they're pimping a new war in Iran. Why Israel, with hundreds of nuclear weapons, who've never abided by any non-proliferation agreement, they want to mass murder people in Iran to protect humankind, all based on lies of what Ahmadinejad, or whatever his name is supposed to have said, all based on lies, all propagated through the Zionist media. It's so disgraceful. And Libya, another criminal war by the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization, as I would call them. And then we got the WHO at the UN, the World Homicidal Organization. We have serious groups of psychopaths who have infiltrated and taken over these bodies. And this simply has to be exposed. And if it did, and it turned, we could solve the problems of humanity on this planet. People have a scarcity. This word, there's not going to be enough oil or something. It's so pathetic. If it weren't for these people, we would have had such richness, abundance, and spiritual values in this world. So we just have to we have to stand up, those of us upright of heart, and do what we can to turn it around. And when we face death, when you go over on the other side, maybe you'll be asked, what did you do? What did you do? Oh, you drank beer and watched men playing games with balls? That's what you did with your life? Oh, good for you. That's really something, Your neighbors are being impoverished. Your country's destroyed. You're being sprayed with chemicals from the air. There's no international law or justice any longer.
Yes.
What did you do? And therein lies what... are you going to attain your soul? It's connected to that. What did you do? What did Christians do? They supported a war for Israel against innocent people. How pathetic.
Yes, and Dr. Holmes, Christopher, recently I've run into some old esoteric writings that speak of that to obtain a body in this reality, in this sphere, what we call the planet Earth, is a very rare thing that many souls wait patiently, millennia, to be re-ensouled into a body so that they can get back to work on themselves, or to work on the grand order of the universe, so to speak, as above, so below. And what do we do with our ensoulment here? What do we do with our body here? And as you said, most of us just spend it on time on frivolous, meaningless things that are of no import. In fact, they're dark import, because we are wasting that precious spark of the divine, and it is hard. And also, you commented on the link between those that spray us down like cockroaches. They see us, yes, as the useless eaters, the goyim, the profane, the uninitiated, the unbegun, the dead, we've been called, because we are not working on ourselves to higher levels of consciousness. As you said, they think they've hit the top rung through the fire, the upturned pyramid, intellect alone. They've bypassed the heart, and they feel illuminated. But we know that there is another way, a middle path that we can go through the heart to reach higher levels of consciousness. But yes, they are criminal. The same criminals that spray us down are the same criminals that killed President Kennedy, the last president that you truly elected with your vote. All the rest have been selected and manipulated into power positions. Also, the criminals that sprayed our troops in Vietnam with Agent Orange. I have in my library a report, a 1990 declassified report from the Department of Veterans Affairs, where the Secretary of Veterans Affairs admitted in front of the closed meeting of Congress, yes, we did spray our own U.S. troops with Agent Orange. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in this gathering, should we admit that we have done this? If we do, we face a large financial liability that we probably won't be able to pay out. Or should we continue to hide this secret and quietly pay the families and the survivors what we can and keep this hidden under the rug? I believe they chose the latter. But the report spoke openly that we did indeed spray our own troops. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if the government, through the Department of Veterans Affairs, could admit to themselves that we did spray our own troops in Vietnam, what do you think, 40 years later, what do you think these psychopaths have the ability to do now in the efforts of spraying people? What do you now that, Christopher, that's the argument I get. Oh, well, they wouldn't spray us. My friend told me this 6 months ago. Bob, they won't spray us down. We make money for these people. Why would they kill their own workforce? Ever heard that one before, Christopher?
Yeah, and partly because they own the pharmaceutical industries and they're preventing natural health products and regulating it more and more, and they want, you can reduce population by reducing longevity. Like, you know, you want to take 20 years off your life, these people would be pleased for you to knock 20 years off your life. Then they don't have to pay you your pension funds. You know, so many people are getting Alzheimer's now, they can't remember anything of their life, you know, in their elder years. It's terrible. These people need to be charged under the anti-terrorist legislation. And chemtrails, not only are they poisoning us now, but if they want to go hard kill, they can do it because they have a weapon delivery system, and they have 1,000 biochemical weapons labs. Who do you think these biological weapons are for? They're not for Osama bin Laden and his reindeer. They're for the American people and people around the world. And this is being done to all of us. All these people need to be brought to justice. See, it's like the military and the police and the intelligence communities completely no longer serve the American people. You know, your whole apparatus has been hijacked, but it could all be turned around, and it would bring such a liberation around the world if we could turn this around. People don't have any concept that, what if we could actually turn this around? Charge those people who sprayed the troops. They say, oh, we wouldn't have money to pay. Yeah, you seize the assets of those behind it who did it. Oh, Mr. Rockefeller, so you seize his fortunes for all the crimes they've committed against the American people for over a century. You know? And these people, you look at the CIA, last 50 years, CIA's been responsible for mass murdering probably 50 to 60 million people around the world, all through Central America, South America, Central Asia, all around the world. You know, funding revolutions, putting in dictators, then giving philanthropic aid of weaponry. And it's all been psychopathic, and none of these people are ever brought to justice. All the wars based on lies and public deception, all the time. CIA's criminals in action. They've been a terrorist organization, just like the Mossad. It's so disgraceful. I through the past years, I mean, I've been overwhelmed at times. I just couldn't believe. It's like J. Edgar Hoover says. He says an individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. And unfortunately, it really is so monstrous that people can't believe it exists. And it's gone on for decades or centuries. But
that's right. That's right. A group cognitive dissonance sets in, a collective cognitive dissonance where we cannot even conceive of this kind of monstrosity against us. As you said, the poison in our food, the poison in the air, the poison in our water, the poison everywhere. I mean, Christopher, I have these these silver mercury fillings in my mouth. If I leave these in here, I will expire probably within 20 years. I'll probably expire much earlier because I've had these in my mouth all my life since I was a little kid. So it's soft kill weaponry. Like you said, the delivery system is there, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think it's going to take to switch over to hard kill on that spray system up in the air? A moment's notice, okay? It's already there. The pilots are conditioned to spray this stuff. The people are conditioned to accept the spray in the air. What does it take, guys? Guys, this is your life. You don't get. This is not a dress rehearsal. You don't get a second chance at this. Now, are you going to be true to yourselves? Are you going to look in that mirror and say, "Hey, I am me. I deserve a life. My family deserves a life." Or just like Christopher and I. This isn't about us. This is about our kids. Okay? We really, this isn't about us. Christopher and I really don't, and I apologize if I'm speaking for you, Christopher. This isn't about us, okay? This is for our kids, and this is for other people, all right? We matter little in the great drop of the drink of life, okay? But what our words mean resonate through history, resonate through the universe. And what I'm trying to do, and Christopher's trying, call to action, guys. Wake up. Wake your friends up. Wake yourself up, for God's sake, and do something. We can't sit on the couch anymore, watch bad television. Those days are over. Time to get active and time to move. Thanks for letting me put that out there, Christopher.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And to envision what it would mean if we could really bring these people to justice. Like what that would really mean. And you went into the Federal Reserve and really exposed all that had gone on and who were these people and how they were behind different wars. You'd be seizing their assets. The Rothschilds, you'd just seize all the assets from these people around the world. See, it would be like a whole new age for humankind. And you could bring forward all these inventions which have been suppressed and hidden from the public and used for deviant purposes. All the new healing methods and agricultural methods and so many valuable things. But these people want population reduction. They seriously do. So it is a war. It's a spiritual war. These are satanic influences. And we need to rise to the occasion. Humankind does. We need to have courage. We need to act out of love and compassion. Like, I'm sorry for these elites because really, they're totally pathetic. Really. Yes. You look into what they are as beings. Like, I see all these stupid little idiots running for the Republican Party, excluding Ron Paul, who has nobility of heart. But you look at Rick Sanatorium and Newt Gingrich and these characters. They're pathological liars with white teeth and fancy clothes, but they support war crimes. They cover up 9/11. I don't believe there's anyone in the U.S. government who doesn't know who did 9/11. I don't believe it. They all pretend they think they've got, deniability. What's that expression? A plausible deniability. That's what they live under. These people have to be exposed for what they are and what they've done. And if we could do that, if the military and police and intelligence community, surely there's got to be brave hearts in those services. Are you guys all cowards? Are you all cowards that you would do this to your fellow citizens while you're being sprayed too? They're being sprayed by chemtrails, and your children are going to have 40 inoculations by the time they're 4. So you'll be lucky if they don't have ADHD or autistic. This is being done to all of us, and there's nothing. It's amazing. It's just there has to be an awakening, and we all need to grow, make our efforts grow exponentially. And I believe we can turn the corner on these people and bring about a new age. And that's what from 2006, when I went through that period of revelation and material I put in my book, 1137, about God's contracting universe. Like at that point, I had experiences where I felt divinely inspired in that, and that's what came to me, that by 2012 we were going to turn the table on these people and what that could mean to the human race, and how these people, we need to put them into a hell of their own design. So all the newspaper people, they can go to the David Rockefeller and have a little button on them saying from David Rockefeller, thanking them for allowing these mass murders to be conducted through the decades without the American public being aware of what they were doing. They all get their mass murder buttons, and they get to go to the David Rockefeller Media Center, and they can listen to all their lies over and over and over again until death. Wolf Blitzer and all these goofballs, and they're so pathetic once you see through them and see how empty they are inside. They have no soul life. You know, these people sell out, and their crimes, all the Monsanto's people, they can have their own FEMA camp, and they can eat GMO foods until their death. And all those people who want inoculations, they can all have all their own inoculations. And all these people who go into the FEMA camps, we put a chip in them in their right hand so the Lord knows who are of the beast. See, people think that the chip is going to be in the people who are not of the beast. Okay, but I think we need to turn it around. I think we need to put the chip of the mark of the beast in those people who were of the beast, and they can all be in their own FEMA camps for intercourse among themselves. Wow. That's the wrath I feel a bit that was part of my revelations. I just felt the wrath of God move through me. I just couldn't believe. I have a son who was scheduled to go to Afghanistan at the time, and that just freaked me out. Like, I grew up in a military family. I respected the military. Now to see my son go over with the possibility of being murdered, so a group of Zionist psychopaths can extend their world order and murder hundreds of thousands of people, all based on lies, and desecrate a country and millions of refugees. What's been done? I just feel, outrage, moral outrage at what I see has been done to us as a human race. And that's my cry of the heart, is for the restoration of justice on this planet. And I believe we can turn the corner on them.
Yes, and in another one of your speakings on an engagement, you spoke about the collective remorse of consciousness to heal on a planetary level. And during your talk here, just within the last few minutes, you said something very profound, and I think it's one of the keys to our solution. It was an appeal to the chemtrailers, to the intelligence people, to the jailers and the wardens of our prison planet. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are the key turners of this prison world, you did not create the system, but you feel bound in it. You feel bound to deliver the chemicals. You feel bound to spray the poison. You feel bound to build concentration camps. Get back to your heart. What does your heart tell you? Your mind is telling you you have to pay bills and you have to do what your masters want you to do. But I want you, in the quiet of your home, or the quiet of where you're located, to seek into the quiet of your heart. What does your heart tell you? Only there will you find the truth. We need you. We need you and we love you. We can't do this thing alone, the people. We need you, police people, military people, intelligence people, and administrative people. We need you. We're crying out to you. Humanity doesn't get a second chance at this. You're the ones who can change this destiny. against these criminals that are using you to thwart us, and we need you. Christopher, is there any way, number one, to comment on that remorse of consciousness, and also how do we begin to unarmor our hearts, to open up our hearts? Because I know it's hard for me. How can we begin this process?
Okay, well, great questions and comments. It's been a pleasure, Bob, being at our talk today. You've had such valuable comments and new material from me. I heard some really neat new things from you, different things you've shared. And remorse of conscience is what Gurdjieff says, not of consciousness, but conscience. Like Gurdjieff says, most people, you hide from seeing what you really are. But if you wake up, you have remorse of conscience because you realize what folly you've done and the cruelty and meanness within yourself. You have remorse of conscience. It's like a turn of heart. And Gurdjieff sees this as an alchemical fire that burns away the impurity. See, most people hide from conscience. They can't really look at what they're doing. And Gurdjieff mentions the means of nicotinism, alcoholism, Athenianism, which is like sexual obsessions, cocainism, like drugs and alcohol to dull conscience within people. But the alchemists, in a way, we want to wake up and experience remorse of conscience. And Gurdjieff saw this as a stage towards awakening, because that opens the higher emotional center connected to the heart. So we as a nation, we need to experience remorse of conscience. How have we allowed this to happen? How have people betrayed their own countrymen like this? We all need a collective remorse of conscience. And when we turn this, we don't want people going out and burning and looting or violence. Like, that's totally not useful to us. And we need even to have compassion on the people who became involved with this, because most people get in, they got no idea what they're getting into. And then they get so far in they can't get out. And they're cowards is another thing. There's a psychological defense called identification with the aggressor. So the aggressor, the governments are becoming terrorizing the people almost. So a lot of cops, they want to identify with the aggressor. So what we need, as we're doing, is appealing to the hearts and of those in the military and police and intelligence community, and we can all turn it around if we envision what a new age and new era in human life would be on this planet if we could actually turn this about. And the other thing, you talk about armoring, and how do we kind of work on awakening the heart. And it brings up something we talked about earlier too, which is breathing and present awareness. Because what I began 40 years ago when I started, the first deep mystical study for me was of the Gurdjieff-Uspensky teaching. And Gurdjieff has a practice that's called self-remembering. And I've practiced this, has been my main spiritual practice through my life. And in self-remembering, the idea is that normally people are not consciously aware of themselves or what's going on within them. Okay, they live in a sleep of semi-automatons where habits of thinking and feeling and action are just repeated over and over again. So what we do in self-remembering, anytime, anywhere in your life, when you remember to do it, you come back to being here now. And as you do that, firstly, you become aware of what's already going on in you, and you become aware of that and let it go, and then you enhance your present-centered awareness, and you sense yourself through your body. It's called self-sensing, through your physical body, and you connect with your breath, because your soul life is connected to your breath. Like in Genesis, God breathes into man a living soul. And in Cabala, there's 5 levels of self. And each of those is connected to a different level of the breath. And the lowest level of the soul life and the breath in the body is that experience of the peace that passeth all understanding, where things are like perfectly still, and that's the lowest level of the soul anchored into the body. And then at higher levels of self-realization, you acquire your own breath, which is breathing much differently than most people breathe, because people are all contracted in the abdomen, in the solar plexus, and they have to learn to breathe into their body. You need to enhance your awakeness and present-centeredness by breathing more deeply and learning to be present. And then also I encourage people, I tap myself over the heart sometimes to try to bring my awareness actually physically back to the heart area of my body. There's a lot more to it. In a way, in the Gurdjieff teaching, I learned early on to struggle with negative emotions. Gurdjieff says none of them are useful for you. None of them. They all waste emotional energies, and whereas you want to accumulate your emotional energies and refine them so that you begin to experience higher emotion. Whereas most people's negative emotions are all based on narcissism, self-love, and such. And so if you start observing negative emotions in yourself, and when they come up, learn to breathe and see what's underlying it and release them. And it's like you can release more and more. And as you do that, you attain a certain inner freedom and liberation. And so I believe we can kind of cultivate. That's part of this cultivating awareness of the heart, is coming back to the present and struggle with negative emotions and breathing. Those are a few elements, Bob. And
yes.
All of that, I think, helps to undo this armoring of the heart. And remorse of conscience is what we began with. That was so valuable you brought that up. That's so important in the Gurdjieff teaching.
Oh, my pleasure. It was you who brought it up. I on a previous engagement when you spoke on the radio. I just wanted to point that out to the listeners here on Occult Empire. Well, we're winding down here. I just didn't know if you wanted to comment on your published works, the Heart Doctrine, or 11. Am I pronouncing that right? 1137 or 1137? God's Contracting Universe.
Well, you could say it either way. 1137. And that happened to be the time on the Peace Tower clock of Ottawa, Canada, Parliament buildings, when I was there on a day in September. And I spent the day videotaping the chemtrail poisoning of the citizens of Ottawa. And my little documentary, which has just been posted up on YouTube, it also focuses on the Peace Tower and the Star of David on the Peace Tower. And I say, but the clock on the Peace Tower has a central point, so it has a seventh element, and I say that means it's ours, and we have to take it back. See, I think it's like a call to arms to those upright of heart. So 1137 in that book, in a way, it's my answer as a mystic to 9/11 is 1137. And there's very deep meaning to those numbers, 1137. Like 137 is the number of Cabala. I've talked about how God is first 1, then 3, then 7, so that number is in there. And part of the idea is that the time is late. It's like 23 minutes to noon. You know, we're in this crisis in the life of humanity upon this planet. In my book, 1137, it has the revelations that occurred to me in 2006, and then it has all types of different investigations of the criminal elites, their history, chemtrails, Agenda 21, Gurdjieff's views on the psychopathology of man. It's a very interesting book, and it's also partly autobiographical because it tells the personal story of what my partner Karen and I went through when we woke up to this, and we went through such bizarre experiences that I still do not know the significance of different things that happened during that time. it took us years almost to come down from the elevated states we experienced when we first woke up to the deception of 9/11. It was like I was, before that, more awake to myself, but really had no idea what was going on in the world. So it tells, 1137 tells a little bit of Karen and my story, and Karen died last year, and I felt that she was a victim of this whole thing that we had faced and what we had tried to do through the last years of our life. So
Yes, I wanted to express our condolences. On your website, zeropoint.ca, you have a wonderful tribute to your partner, Karen Hale, and that you'd lost her. Christopher, on a personal level, I do want to say I'm so very sorry. I could tell that there was quite a love there, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, and you know, it made me realize, boy, all you men out there, if you have a woman who supports you in your truth efforts, and for men and women to support each other, you're so lucky to have that, and I hope people have that. We all need to face this together, and Karen helped me face it through the last 6 years of our life. And you know, we turned to the internet, and it's kind of like we learned more and more and more, and it got more and more horrifying. It's so terrible. And we did many things that really, I think, showed bravery on our part, going out and trying to expose things and do what we could do. And I felt Karen, I say in my books, my last 2 books are dedicated to Karen because I felt she earned her star through it all, that she had attained something because she made the effort to live in truth and love, and took up the sword with me to try to, like, what do we do? You know, like, what do we do? You know, like what you were saying earlier, Bob, it's not just for us. Like, I'm an elder. I feel an elder. This is for my children. This is for the person listening here. This is for 7 generations of God's children. Yeah. You know, I do it for you. You know, we need to do it for each other. We need to do it because it's in God's way. There is a higher nature to human beings. And we need to awaken people spiritually, that they have the bravery to take on this remorse of conscience and see what's happened. And we want people at all levels to turn. And we need understanding of them, not cruelty and not destroying anything. We would liberate the people in the media. People in the media, they hate what they do. I told one person in mainstream media once, I said, you must be ashamed of what you do. You know what she said? We are. They're ashamed of themselves. They're pathological liars. They're ashamed of themselves. We want to liberate them. They can be real reporters again, you know, and liberate the doctors, and liberate, all of us can be liberated from these people. So I have hope still. And so my books, one is The Heart Doctrine, which I consider my most important because it's all about human consciousness and the mysteries of consciousness and the heart. I've got a profound book on the physics of the secret doctrine, how Blavatsky's creation metaphysics in 1888 anticipated modern views of vacuum genesis, singularity, 7-dimensional hyperspace, non-local effects, higher dimensional holographic reality. So that's all about the physics of the secret doctrine, which I'd say reveals the significance of that book more than anything in the literature. And I have a profound book on Gurdjieff's classic, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, which is all about the causes of war and the causes of human psychopathology on planet Earth. So it's a very profound book relevant to ongoing times. And yeah, so I have 6 books all told and hope to keep going for a while, but I've had a couple close calls.
Well, I hope not too close. But where can people find these books, Christopher?
Well, they're available through Amazon. So you can really buy them through any bookstore in North America. And otherwise, I don't have them in shops, and I haven't been able to deal with my distribution much of my work. I practically sell nothing of my books. That's been discouraging for me. You know, it's like somehow just my work's not caught on or something. I'm not sure what it is, you know. But I do what I can do.
We just need to. That's right. We just need to keep pumping it word of mouth. So the Heart Doctrine by Dr. Christopher Holmes would be one for your metaphysical studies. If you resonated with anything that was discussed today about the heart and opening the heart and opening the heart chakra to higher levels of consciousness, because as stated, the pure intellect, yes, you can open the third eye through pure intellect, but that goes into what Christopher spoke of, the eye doctrine, which is not for the serious student, for the elect. Oh, yes, you can become illuminated in a lesser fashion, but to open up the true holistic middle path, the heart is the way to go. Christopher, thank you so much for your time, sir. I know it's very valuable to you. And would you consider coming back on Occult Empire sometime?
Oh, absolutely, Bob. And any time. It was a pleasure to have this time together, and I felt so open today, and you really contributed such valuable pieces all the way along. I really felt we were in accord, and yeah, it was a pleasure being on with you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, sir. Hey, like I said, when I first heard your voice, I resonated with what you said, and I want to share it with everybody. I believe that you and others, a few others, are the most valuable voices right now. We need to hear your voice. Christopher, we're going to look forward to your next broadcast. When is that, on bbsradio.com?
Yeah, on Saturday, March 3rd, and I'm doing a special issue with Jim Fetzer and Eric Hendry on how there were no planes on 9/11. It was all video fakery by the media and my own analysis of the scripted witnesses of 9/11. The whole thing was a psyop done by the media. In my view, there were no planes of any kind hitting buildings. So that will be a very interesting show.
We will look forward to it, sir. Christopher, thank you so much. I want you to have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
My pleasure. Good afternoon, Christopher. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me on this episode of Occult Empire 004. We'll join you again next time. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye, everybody.